Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked Fly Fly Fishing. And today we're going to talk about how to solve a problem when we're using flies like the sand eel pattern, where we can get hook fouling if the wing wraps around the hook. So for example, if you were to happen to hit the water behind you, you can get this sort of thing happening. Very, very annoying. It spins up your leader when it comes through the water. Obviously, it doesn't catch fish when it looks like that. So you'll find this even with bucktail, which is relatively stiff hair, it will still do that. When it gets wet, it gets softer. And you whack the water behind you, and there you go. It's fouled. So, and, if that happens, one every 5 or 6 casts, you're spending a lot of time stripping a fly back that's not going to catch fish. So you're wasting fishing time, and you're missing opportunities because of the fouling. So we're going to show a method on how to reduce the fouling. It doesn't eliminate it entirely, but it does reduce the odds of you having a fouled hook problem. So let's go through. We're going to do my sand eel because that's a real headache for me. The sand eel patterns do foul quite often. So I've got my usual short shank extra heavy hook that I typically use for striped bass. This is about a 3/0, I think. And I'll go through the materials. The thread I'm using is this Danville monofilament fine. I like to use this thread on any pattern where I want the colors to show through where I wind. The material we're going to use for preventing the fouling is a synthetic. It's called Super Hair. I don't know if it's still sold. This is really old stuff that I have laying around, but it's relatively stiff, and that's what we're looking for, a stiff synthetic material to be our anti-fouling wing, if you want to put it in those terms. And then we've got two bucktails, this white and the sage, that we're going to use for the wing. We have the peacock curl to go on top. We have some pearlescent flash as well, plus we have some stick-on eyes to go with it. So let's get started. First off, as usual, I should say that I'm not going to go gung-ho on explaining the sand eel itself, because I've already done a video on the sand eel. I will just do this rather quickly. Now what we're going to do is first we're going to put on this. I'm just going to take a few strands. We're not going to be using a really, really thick amount here. And I will just trim these off square. I'm going to bring my thread back, leave some room, pull up, and I'll keep it up. So I keep pulling up because I want this to stay on top of the hook. You don't want this to go around the hook. Bring your thread forward. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to taper this. I'm just going to puff that up, and I'm going to have it roughly the length of the hook shank, roughly. Maybe a little bit longer. And what I'll do is I'll just take off some of those bottom ones. So now now you see it splayed a little bit. When I put the bucktail on, I put some soft wraps at the end, and that will bring those together. And so it won't look so splayed out. So next we're going to put on our white. Again, as before, we pull up, keep the bucktail on top. And when we get to the end, hold everything and just put in some very soft wraps. That'll help keep the materials together. Now for our flash. for the sage bucktail. A few short strands in there I'll take out. Again, keep everything on top. And some very gentle wraps at the back, and then come forward. Now for the peacock curl. And finally the stick-on eyes. I'll just bring it, make a last pass at the back with some very soft wraps just to try and bring everything together. And then bring forward and whip finish. So there's our sand eel with some of the super hair, where is it? Some of the super hair, which is very stiff material, underneath the bucktail and shorter than the bucktail, roughly the length of the hook shank, maybe a little bit more. So what happens when this goes through the water and hits the water behind it, that stiffer material will tend to deflect the bucktail in one way or the other instead of around the gape of the hook. So it'll go to the side as opposed to going around. It's not a perfect solution. You will still get some fouling, but it should minimize it and keep it keep most of your cast effective, and you're not, half your cast pulling back a fouled fly. Especially if you're having a rough day with your casting and you can keep hitting the water behind you, that gets very annoying. And if you've ever been in that situation, the more you try not to do it, the more you do it. And you end up, saying lots of rude words as you're constantly unfouling the fly. So I would just put you could put epoxy on this, I could put UV glue on this, whatever you want to use, finish it off, and you've got a perfectly functional sand eel that shouldn't foul that often, and it doesn't hurt the profile either, because this will, if you've looked at sand eels, they tend to be sort of a little wider at the back, so it actually helps the profile a little bit to put that material in there, and it gives it a certain amount of translucence through the body as well, which doesn't hurt. So give that a try. Just add some stiffer synthetic material. I'm using super hair. I don't even know if it's still sold. The stuff is really old that I have here. And just put that as a short underbody, and then, this thing will reduce the fouling, no question. So give it a try. Cheers.